Thousands of people took to US streets in protest over the weekend in an effort to protect abortion rights. Protests across the country were triggered by news that the US Supreme Court could overturn the landmark 1973 Roe v. Wade decision. Experts are saying a decision may be released as early as today. Joining us live now is former White House Chief of Staff and Senior Fellow at the US Studies Centre at the University of Sydney, Mick Mulvaney. Thank you for your time.
Elise, it's wonderful to be here.
Now, this is going to be huge when it comes out. We've seen the leaked the opinion, not even decision, coming out of the Supreme Court. What do you think is the impact going to be once that happens?
The impact will probably be, there's a bunch of different impacts. There'll be the practical impact on the ability to get an abortion in my country. There'll be a political impact in the upcoming election, and there'll be a longer term impact on maybe the structures of our government. The impact on abortion is going to be interesting in that it doesn't ban abortion in the United States. I think there's a misconception that this decision will effectively ban abortion. And it doesn't do that. What it's going to do is essentially say there is no federal right to an abortion. And what that will do is then kick the issue down to the various states. So some states will continue to allow abortions. Other states will ban them. I think folks in this country may not understand. In fact, many people in my country don't understand that the federal government has never passed a law allowing abortion or outlawing abortion. It came out of the Supreme Court decision. So the Supreme Court decision will effectively kick it back down to the states. There will be an impact, I think, although very small, on the midterm elections, and it may actually help the Republicans in the midterm elections because their voters are much more interested in abortion than Democrats. The last 4 national polls we have had put abortion at less than 1% on the most important issues facing the country. The bigger issue longer term, Annalise, is whether or not this will then lead to a discussion about changing the Supreme Court. And that's a longer discussion, I think, for another day.
Oh, yeah. But I'm fascinated. Do you think this won't have a big impact in midterms? Because this is something that will likely at least mobilise Democrats. They're not enthusiastic right now. The polling for Biden is awful, whichever way you cut it. So isn't this going to be a critical thing that they can make people rally around?
Yes and no. I've actually seen some interior of Democrat polling that shows yes, but. Democrats do care about abortion rights, but it doesn't motivate them as much as it motivates the pro-life wing of the Republican Party. It's important to all voters, but it drives Republicans to the polls more than Democrats. Keep in mind, we do not have compulsory voting, and much of our political efforts are aimed at getting our voters, our base voters, out. And abortion rights, simply for whatever reason, don't drive Democrats to the polls like pro-life issues drive Republicans.
And that is fascinating too, because I've been looking into this quite a bit, as you can imagine, and things have changed a lot since 1973. It is easier to access medical terminations, it's easier to travel than it was before, and it does seem like there's going to be a lot more states on board than there would have been at the time. Do you think culturally things have shifted as well?
A little bit. I think, face it, technology has made a big difference. In 1973, ultrasounds were not widely available. People didn't have pictures of what children looked like at 6 and 8 and 12 weeks. The culture has changed. The younger generation is probably evenly split on whether or not abortion should be widely used. Legal, illegal is probably not the right term. Should it be used as a form of birth control is sort of the issue that still continues to split my country. So yes, you're right. Traveling is easier. Technology healthcare is better.
It's much easier to pick up genetic issues.
It is.
That's where a lot of the really tough decisions come down for people.
Many things have changed since 1973, which I think Republicans, conservatives like myself, like the decision because of its impact on abortion, because I'm pro-life, but just as importantly, we like the fact that what this will do is move this issue to the legislatures, to the elected officials who can deal with those types of changes. The court is unelected in my country. They're not accountable to anybody, and they effectively made a law with Roe versus Wade in 1973. So moving it out of the courts back to the legislature, because of all the changes in the culture and the technology over the last 50 years, is probably the right decision.
One of the things I'm quite interested in, though, is that if there's going to be a proliferation of these laws like we've seen in Texas, where you can deputise people to have civil suits against anyone who's helping procure an abortion, it can be an Uber driver. Are we going to see an explosion of those laws?
I think those were designed as a way around Roe versus Wade, and with Roe versus Wade going away, I don't think you'll see those same machinations to try and sort of thread the needle to get around the restrictions that Roe versus Wade put on abortion. But it's a fascinating example because now other states, more liberal-leaning states, more left-wing-leaning states in my country are looking at ways to say, get around the Second Amendment protections that the court has given in order to deputize people to enforce gun laws and so forth. So it's a fascinating sort of development. Let's hope things get simpler. I don't think they'll get any better in my country, but at least they'll be simpler, and you'll have legislatures deciding laws instead of courts.
And can I ask you, we just had the Prime Minister speaking in Darwin.
Yeah.
He was asked a number of national security type questions, and in particular about the increasing number of US Marines there. This is the story of our time, how security is changing in this region. I'm not sure if you saw the details of the AUKUS alliance, that there was concern that Labor wasn't briefed in enough. Do you think that that really would have cut through in Washington?
I'm sorry, cut through in what fashion? I'm sorry,
I mean, they're saying that Labor wasn't briefed and that the US wanted a bipartisan commitment from Australia and that Labor should have been briefed much sooner.
Again, I'll leave it to you folks as to how you want to handle your internal politics. We really don't perceive the relationship as changing much if it goes from Labor to the Liberal Party, just as I don't think you really perceive it that differently, whether it's Republicans or the Democrats. The relationship is cultural, it's almost familial, and it's long, certainly it's over 100 years now, this relationship. So it's not the type of thing that I think sort of changes dramatically with party changes. What you're seeing is a commitment by both Republicans and Democrats in Washington, D.C. to reinforce the Quad countries, to develop this sort of counterbalance to China. China has not fared well in sort of the League of Nations over its behavior on COVID, its behavior on Russia. And I think you continue to see strengthened relationships between our two countries, which you saw with the critical minerals agreement we had a couple of weeks ago. Right. And with the appointment of Caroline Kennedy, the confirmation this week, a tremendous commitment, I think, to that ongoing relationship.
Yeah, no, we're all looking forward to Caroline Kennedy starting. I've heard that she might not be living in Canberra, though. She might choose to live in Sydney instead.
I will, I won't get into domestic politics in this country. I've been in Sydney for the first time, and it's absolutely fabulous. I'm sure Canberra is lovely as well.
It does have beautiful beaches, so. Mick Mulvaney, thank you for your time. Now